pleasant day to everyone. I am Faith A. Vijiga from Tarlac Agricultural University, College of Education. My subject for today is science, specifically about faults. Good day, learners! How are you today? Oh, very good! Before we start to our new lesson, let us first bow our heads and feel the presence of the Lord. Father God, come be with us today. Fill our hearts with joy. Fill our classroom with peace. Fill our lessons with fun. Fill our friendships with kindness. Fill our school with love. Amen. Okay, learners, let us check your attendance. Please check your body, and if your body is absent, please type their names on the chat box. Oh, great! Everybody is present. Before we go on to our new lesson, let us first have this activity and recall what we have discussed on our previous session. To do it, you will have this activity. You will determine whether the statement is true or false. Are you ready, learners? Oh, great! Let's begin. Number 1. A fault is a break in the Earth's crust, and along the breaks, no movements occurs. True or false? That's correct! The statement is false. It is true that a fault is a break in the Earth's crust, and along the break, there is a movement occurs. Number 2. An earthquake is unexpected tremble or movement of the tectonic plates produced by shaking of the grounds. True or false? Oh, your answer is correct! The statement is true. An earthquake is unpredictable. Therefore, we should always be prepared and know the safety tips before, during, and after an earthquake. Number 3. The Philippines is located along the Pacific Ring of Fire. True or false? Incredible! The Philippines is located along the Pacific Ring of Fire, distinguished by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes caused by the movement of tectonic plates. Number 4. Seismograph is a type of instrument that measures and records the motion of an earthquake. True or false? Awesome! It is true that the seismograph is a type of instrument that measures and records the motion of the ground during an earthquake, but it cannot predict when an earthquake will occur. Number 5. Earthquake is not associated with faults. True or false? The statement is false. A fault is a region of fractures between blocks of rocks in which movement occurs. This motion might occur quickly in the form of an earthquake. Let us discuss more about faults later on. Great job, students! You really understood what we have discussed on our previous lesson. Before we go on to our next lesson, I want you to look at these video clips I'll be showing. What can you observe in the video? Yes, you are correct. The building collapsed because of an earthquake. This earthquake happened in the year 1976, the Morro Gulf earthquake. It has a magnitude of 7.9 and has estimated 3,000 casualties in Mindanao Island. It is the official strongest and deadliest earthquake in the Philippine history. How about this one? What can you observe in the video? Yes, absolutely correct. You can see damaged infrastructures, buildings, and a lot of people have been trapped and died. This is because of an earthquake. It happened in the year 1990 in the areas of Central Luzon and Cordillera region. It has a magnitude of 7.8 and has 1,621 casualties. It is considered as the second strongest and deadliest earthquake that hit the country. How about this one? what is presented in the video. Awesome! As you can see, there were collapsed buildings and infrastructures. The video presented the 1968 Kasiguran earthquake. It has a magnitude of 7.3 and it is considered the third strongest earthquake that also caused massive landslides and tsunamis in Kasiguran, Aurora. It has 270 casualties. Why do you think this occurrence happened? You will find the answer to this question at the end of our lesson, because our lesson objective for today are: define a fault, determine the different features of the fault and how the occurrence of tectonic plates, and lastly, analyze how do faults generate earthquakes. Let us find out why earthquake is associated with fault. Faults have been scattered anywhere in the Earth's crust that varies from meters to kilometers long. A fault is a fracture in the Earth's crust where two blocks of rocks meet. It allows displacement that causes the shaking of the surface of the Earth. Do you know that there are three types of faults? Namely, normal fault, reverse or thrust fault, or strike-slip fault. Number 1. The normal fault. This occurs when there is a tension or pulling part in the Earth's crust, where the direction of the movement of the hanging wall is downward relative to the footwall. As presented here, you can see how the normal fault occurs. For better understanding of the movement of the fault, it can be demonstrated using our two hands, like this one. Did you do it? Oh, great! What can you observe with your hands? Excellent! As you observe, the blocks are moving away from each other, like this one. The second one is the reverse or thrust fault. This occurs when there is a compression in the Earth's crust, where the direction of the movement of the hanging wall is relative to the footwall, like this one. This is how the reverse or thrust fault occurs. Let's do it again using our two hands, like this one. Wow! Incredible! What can you observe with your hands? That's good! The blocks are moving towards each other, like this one. Lastly, the strike-slip fault. This occurs with the movement of the blocks pass to each other due to shear stress. For instance, you are on the one side of the block and the direction of the opposite block moves towards the right. It is called the right lateral strike-slip fault. Let's do it again using your two fists, like this one. Can you follow, learners? Very good! While, if the direction of the opposite blocks moves towards the left, it is called left lateral strike-slip fault, like this one. You got it? Excellent! Okay, let us also define what is a footwall and a hanging wall for better understanding. A footwall refers to a block of rock that lies below the fault line. Think of the footwall as the floor of your house, where you can stand or walk. Can you imagine it, learners? Very good! While the hanging wall refers to a block of rock that lies above the fault line. Think of the hanging wall as the ceiling of your house, where you can hang objects. By understanding the features of a fault, it helps the geologists in studying the movements or the occurrence of the tectonic plates towards each other. Can you follow, learners? Now that you understood the three types of fault, let us move on to the classification of a fault. Do you know what are those? Very good! On this part, it will help you determine and understand if a fault is active or inactive. An active fault is a fault that has potential to create minor and major earthquake in the future and is regarded to be geologic hazard. It is commonly considered to be active if a movement observed or the evidence of seismic wave has been observed during the past 10 years. Shallow earthquakes are commonly a disturbance occurring along active faults, while inactive fault is a fault that can be identified but do not have earthquake. It is difficult to determine if a fault is active or inactive, but the basis to identify a fault that is active or inactive is the last substantial offset occurred across a fault. An inactive fault is a fault that historically do not show sign of Earth's crust movements underneath for millions of years. There is no guarantee that inactive faults will not generate earthquake because it can be active in no time. Therefore, just like an active fault, it may trigger an earthquake, which is considered to be a geologic hazard as well. Can you follow, learners? Great! Did you know that in the Philippines, we have 5 major active fault lines? Here are those. The first one is the Marikina Valley Fault. It can be found in Montalban, San Mateo, Marikina, Pasig, Taguig, Muntinlupa, San Pedro, Binyan, Carmonan, Santa Rosa, Calamba, Tagaytay, and Oriental Mindoro. The second one is the Western Philippine Fault that can be found in Luzon Sea, Mindoro Strait, Panay Gulf, and Sulu Sea. Number 3. Eastern Philippine Fault that can be found in the Philippine Sea. The fourth one is the Southern of Mindanao Fault that can be found in the Moro Gulf and Salaba Sea. Lastly, the Central Philippine Fault that can be found in entire Ilocos Norte, Aurora, Quezon, Masbate, Eastern Leyte, Southern Leyte, Agusan del Sur, Agusan del Norte, and Davao del Sur. Do you understand it, learners? Excellent! Okay, learners, let's have a self-check. Answer the activity called the word math. Directions. Read and analyze the questions and use each set of clues to get the correct answer. Number 1. What do you call the region of fractures between the blocks of rocks in which movements occurs? Incredible! Your answer is correct. The answer is fault. Number 2. The direction of the movement of the hanging wall is upward relative to the footwall. What type of fault is this? Great job! It is called the reverse fault. Number 3. The direction of the hanging wall is downward relative to the footwall. What type of fault is this? Awesome! It is called the normal fault. Number 4. What classification of fractures in the Earth's crust is expected to create earthquakes sometimes in the future? You're absolutely correct. It is called the active fault. Number 5. What classification of fault that did not show any signs of movements historically which can be identified but no earthquakes occurs? Nice! It is inactive fault. Great job, learners! I can see that you really understood what we have discussed. Moving on, let us sum up what we have discussed. James, can you define what is fault? Great job! A fault is a fracture in the Earth's crust where two blocks of rocks meet. Angelique, can you define the 3 types of fault? How about you, Monique? Can you demonstrate it using your 2 hands? Wow! You really understood what we have discussed. Julie, how about the 2 classification of faults? Can you identify and explain it? Yes! Absolutely correct! An active fault is the one that has potential to create major and minor earthquake in the future and is considered as geologic threat. while active faults are those that can be located but do not produce any earthquake. Carla, how about the 5 major fault lines in the Philippines? Can you enumerate it? Awesome! Very good! To answer the questions earlier, why this occurrence happened and why earthquake is associated with faults, it is because an earthquake is a sudden movement along the fault. The motion releases stored up energy in the form of seismic wave which move along the Earth's interior and cause the ground to tremble. Once the friction has overcome, the ground will shake and an earthquake will happen. But if the fault stops moving, the quake also stops. Since the Philippines is located along the Pacific Ring of Fire, we cannot escape earthquake. How can we avoid too much damage, especially to our lives? Is there any way to prevent this damage? Nico, do you have any idea? Yes, you are correct. Our government designed a program where all of us are reminded to be aware and be prepared. This is called the Nationwide Simultaneous Earthquake Drill that happens quarterly. Here are the earthquake safety tips. Before earthquake, number 1, know the hazards. Familiarize yourself with earthquake hazards in your area. Number 2, know the evacuation area. Check the nearest route going to identify evacuation area. Number 3, prepare your house or workplace. Number 4, prepare an emergency supply kit. Make it accessible at all times. Number 5, learn to use the first aid kit, fire extinguishers, alarms, switching off water lines, gas tanks, and circuit breaker. Number 6, participate during drills. Regularly practice the evacuation procedure. During earthquake, number 1, do the drop, cover, and hold. Number 2, stay calm. If you're indoors, stay inside. If you're outside, stay outside. Number 3, if you're outdoors, stay in open area, away from power lines, buildings, or anything that might fall. Number 4, avoid making flame. There can be broken gas lines somewhere. Number 5, if you're in a car, stop the car and stay inside the car until the earthquake stops. Number 6, don't use elevators. They may shut down. After earthquake, number 1, check for injuries, then provide first aid. Number 2, check water, gas, and electric lines for damage and report it to the authorities. Number 3, be updated. Monitor the situation from the radio. Number 4, stay away from damaged area. Number 5, be careful around broken glass and debris. Number 6, stay away from beaches. Tsunamis can happen. Number 7, if you're at school or work, follow the emergency plan. Number 8, expect aftershocks. So, we should always be prepared because earthquake is unpredictable. #ligtas ang may alam. Great job, learners! Moving on, for your assessment, you will have a short quiz using Kahoot application. Use this code to access it. I will only give you 15 minutes to answer it.
After 15 minutes.
Brilliant! As I see the result, most of you got high scores. Great job, learners! For your assignment, you will have 2 sets of activities. The first one is called Where Will I Live? I will read the directions for you. Analyze the figure below to help you decide on the safest cities you want to reside. Answer the questions that follow. The rubric is also provided so that you will know how you'll be graded. The next activity is called It's Your Fault. For the first part of your activity, you need to provide the needed information on the table. You need to include the type of stress and draw an illustration on a type of fault and use an arrow to show the directions of its movement. For the next part, in your own words, differentiate the two classification of fault, the active fault and inactive fault. Your activities are now posted on our Google Classroom. Reminder, you should always follow the format. Activity number, your surname, your first name, and your section. The due date is on February 14, 2022. Thank you so much, learners, for your active participation. Stay safe and God bless. Bye!